So welcome to those who know me and who have come back to listen to another one. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Michele Buster, and I have been selling cheese every day for about 27 years now. This is Omorro, and this is the first cheese that we have. So hopefully, if you read the notes, it was a softer cheese is better to leave out at least 2 hours, and the Ovelha Amanteigado 2 hours and beyond, because these cheeses have to be soft and creamy. It's also true that, you know, they have an evolution. So depending at the time that the retailer might get them to when you get them, they might be softer or a little bit more semi-soft to the firm side. But this is a very fun cheese. We're in the middle of the Azores here, and where the red dot is, this is Horta. This is the main town on the island of Faial. And in front of it, where you see Magdalena and Laje de Pico and San Roque de Pico, that's another island where we just are starting a new cheese from there. Velas is São Jorge. We'll be back here for the São Jorge cheese. Where you see Angra de Heroísmo, that's the last place I was right before the pandemic hit. I was invited to speak at a cheese conference there, and I found groundbreaking new cheeses, and I'm excited to be able to introduce them in the next months to the States, but it'll take some time. And then all the way on your left is Flores. It's the westernmost part of Europe. They say that, you know, once you get to the island of Flores, you're lucky to get off. And I went. And it's really hard because the weather is very unstable. There's a lot of rain. That's why it's called the Island of Flowers. I couldn't see anything for 4 days because it was just shrouded in rain and in mist. So I missed seeing all of the gorgeous flowers. And I had to buy an extra plane ticket to get off because there was no guarantee that I was going to get off the day I needed to go and I needed to be in Italy. So it was kind of crazy. Anyway, back to Horta. Faial is where my producer is. It's a teeny, 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 tiny producer. There's just 3 people in the plant making this wonderful little cow's milk cheese. And I was fortuitously in the main town and went to a cheese shop and tasted about 10 cheeses. And when I tasted this one, I said, oh my God, I, want to see if I can work with these people. So the cheese shop owner gave me their phone number. And I was traveling, at that point it was kind of, I was on another island, I came over there, and I was traveling for myself. And I just called them on the phone and I said, hi, I'm a cheese importer in New York, can I come visit you? And let's go to the next slide so I can show you the people. And they were just like, oh, okay, we'll come pick you up. And after that visit, we started working together. So it's really, really fun. So here's just this view is actually the same one that's on the label. It's some of the landscape of Faial. It's pretty dry and rocky, but up in the center, there's plenty of areas for the cows to graze lusciously. And Rui, who's the main cheesemaker, with his brother and his brother's wife, are the people dedicated to making cheese in this place. So here we have Rui all the way to the left. Marcia's husband, and I'm drawing a blank, and another lady. And Rui came and showed me his new cow, his calf, which was super cute. The cheese, if you notice the name Amanteigado in Portuguese means buttery. And so there's this very unusual type of cheese that only is made in Portugal and in Western Spain. And it's these soft, creamy cheeses. In Spain, they call it a torta. And in Portugal, they call it amanteigado. And for them, it just is like a soft, buttery cheese. And it just has this allure that's amazing. Most of the amanteigado styles are made with thistle rennet as a flower. So like a thistle being the purple flower that we should see it later that has the stamens. But this gives the flavor in the cheese a bit more floral, a lighter quality, and helps to make that really kind of creamy, thick consistency. I would, besides the honey, I would pair this with, we do something called a mostarda, which is slices of fruit that have been candied for a long period of time in sugar. And then there's a spicy mustard extract. So what comes to mind is a green tomato mostarda, which would be really fun, having it with cheese. This is something that you could use kind of as a fondue style. You could spread it on bread and just grill it, but it's super fun, easy, and you don't need to write a dissertation about it. We'll show you some pictures from their plant in the cheese making process. This is the curd. So this is just some of the production facilities that you see where the tanks, the milk goes in, they'll add the rennet, they'll have a stirrer that will turn around and cut the curd. A softer cheese is going to have a larger curd style. A more aged cheese will have a smaller, more like a grain of rice or a chickpea. So it's very important for how little or how much that you might turn the lira, which is this machine here with all the bars. That's what breaks down the curd. And the larger the curd, the more the moisture stays in. So you have a softer, creamier cheese. The more that you keep agitating and turning and stirring, you are squeezing the whey from the cheese. And the whole process when you make cheese, when you convert it, you need to separate the cheese from the whey. So over here, he's pouring out the curd, and the curd goes into the molds. The molds are perforated so that the whey can come out, and all the liquid is the draining here. And so this just is in the process of separating the curds from the whey. And with younger cheeses, with more mild cheeses, it's crucial to get that separation of curds and whey as quickly as possible so that the whey itself doesn't turn the curd bitter. Here's just so you can see some cheeses aging in the room. I don't know if you can get the scale of size, but it's teeny. They're just these, like your bedroom's gonna be bigger than their aging room. And they tend to make the same style of cheese. If you notice all the way in the back, some of them, there's like a white cloth around them. Portugal is famous for wrapping the outer part of their cheeses with a cloth, and you'll see that with the Ovelha Amanteigado. And this is because this style of cheese is so soft, they want to keep the shape. So that helps to keep the shape almost like a girdle. And in some instances, if you're manually brushing it, because the cheeses are going to have some mold, and then they brush it and to clean them, sometimes you nick the rind and it'll start to come out. And so they also might bandage it. So it can be considered a bandage as well. And then others just use it for beauty because it's something that is so characteristic to see. Next slide, please. Oh, wait, I see a question. Hang on. What happens with the whey? Good question. They make ricotta, or let's see. This is in Portuguese, they call it requeijão. So they'll take all the whey, they will cook the whey. Depending on your country, they'll add some milk, or they'll add, in Italy, you might add cream, or you might just cook the milk and the whey, which is the extract. And then that becomes ricotta, requeijão. And the really big industrial companies might dry their whey and then sell it off to other people. If there's excess whey, a lot of people will feed it to the pigs, as is famous in Italy from the Parmigiano whey that go into the pigs for feed. It's very, very healthy for pigs for the feed. Good question. Thank you. Alva is named after a river in this area of Portugal. Sometimes cheeses don't have names. And of course, we can't sell something if it doesn't have a name. So I try and help out and find something that gives the cheese meaning by having it. And in this case, I looked at the geography and tried to find something that Americans could pronounce and came up with Alva. Alva is what we call a washed curd cheese. It's made from goat's milk. The Murciano goat was originally native to Spain, but for years it's been also raised in and around Portugal. And these are animals that produce a fair bit of milk, but the fat in the milk is really great. So it's a wonderful animal to make cheese with because you have a great buttery nature to it. As you're tasting this cheese, and you're getting that it's mild and that it just coats your tongue kind of with a pleasing butteriness. but very light. This is because this is from what we call that washed curd. So if you have in mind the photo of the woman holding the curd in the hand, instead of literally just pouring out what the curd is, there's another step, and they run the vat of curd with water, and that washes the curd and makes it sweeter and milder. And it's something that you find often in the northern part of in Switzerland, and you'll find it in Holland and in other countries. It's a very common usage, but it's not very common in Portugal and Spain to see that. But this is my second washed curd goat cheese. And for me, I just love the textures that it gives you, like the voluptuousness in your mouth, the mildness, that it just makes me want to make a grilled cheese or to plain it on top of some vegetables. I could see shredding it also and doing a quesadilla with it. It goes really well with that honey. I think it would go well with, we sell something called a Portuguese tomato jam. And that would be really nice with it, the sweetness with a little bit of the acidity that goes, or blood orange confiture. There's a lot of different things that, you know, you could get with the flavors and the berries. But it's there's something called DOP, or PDO, Protected Denomination of Origin. And these cheeses are not protected denomination of origin cheeses. They can be made anywhere, but they're specific to the different people that we work with. Here we are. So if you go from Lisbon north, there's a couple of ways of going there. Of course, I usually take a wrong turn, but this is a very small town nestled through a lot of hills, valleys, and very close to the Serra da Estrela National Park, which is this huge, wide, cavernous mountain range. So there's a lot of animals and a lot of cheese making in this region for it. And I mean, just hundreds of producers in that one area making goat cheese, sheep cheese, mixed milk cheese. There are, you know, animals and farmers everywhere. So it's definitely part of the character. In there, we work with a company called Queijo Tavares. So my producers are, actually everybody in this picture works except for the son. The woman on the left does the quality control. So everything that we do from Europe has to have quality control. We have to do all of these different paperwork according to the US to make sure that our cheeses are safe for the American public. Philippe is the main director who I deal with, and his partner is the next guy, and all the way on the right is the plant manager. I got to meet Dad, and Dad's really fun. And he was making requeijão in the background. And it was, when we work with people, I mean, I go and I learn and I go there, but it's not just a buying and selling. It's very much a personal relationship with people and understanding the generations of family that they work with, and trying to take that tradition and transfer it to you. The cheeses that they make here some are new style, some are DOP style, but this is like a very important livelihood for them, and working with all of the shepherds in the neighboring areas to transform the milk. They are a co-op, and a co-op means that you have different members, and then you go and you collect milk from each of them, and then you make the cheese in the one cheese plant that's there. So here, where we have some, they're stirring the curd, they're kind of moving the curd a little bit away in the vat. This is more, you can see, we call it a lira. And Michael, I don't know if you know what it is in English, but I learned my cheese making in Italian, and then I just adapted it to the other places. But this is the part that you put on when you're going to cut the curd, because before you cut it, you have like a big bowl of custard. You have the milk, and then you add the cheese cultures, and you add the rennet, like I said, and then it all solidifies and it gets like jello. And then with this you cut. Over on the right, this is when they press cheese. So a cheese like Alva will be pressed for a short period of time. This is a horizontal press, because there's vertical and horizontal. So the cheese goes inside, you put this on the lid and you turn it sideways. And then by pressure, they all stay side by side. and that helps to press the whey out from the milk and the curd, so that then it goes into the next process, which is the salting and then before the aging. Here's some of Alva as it's aging on the racks. Here they're not using wood, which some places use wood, but this is stainless steel. And this is very young cheese that's just being there. Okay, this is another cheese made by the same people, Queijo de Tavares. We pronounce this as Ovelha, as if the H was a Y. Ovelha Amanteigado. Now this just means buttery sheep cheese. And if this were the most famous cheese in Portugal, is called Serra da Estrela. And it is an Ovelha Amanteigado, but it is a name. It's a protected denomination of origin cheese, which is made with a specific breed of sheep in that same region of Peralta, in the park of near the Serra da Estrela Park. This particular cheese is not DOP, so it doesn't have to be made in that specific regional area, and it doesn't have to have a specific breed of sheep. So there's a wider range of what can be used to make it. Hopefully this cheese is nice and super soft for you. If not, you might have to leave it out even longer, because sometimes it takes me 4 or 5 hours to get this cheese, you know, as soft and creamy as I want it, if it's just come in. To me, this is a drug. This cheese is just a drug. It is big aroma. When you eat it, you know, in your mouth, it just fills your mouth, and you get sweet, you get floral, you get savory, you get a good bit of acidity coming towards the back, and I don't know, I just can never stop eating it. It's something, we did some recipes with fondue and we put different vegetables in it, but when I'm in Portugal, it's the only time I know I'm in the cheese business, but I don't eat a lot of cheese. I eat a whole cheese by myself. I'm sitting there, I might be driving hours at a time. I'm grabbing for my cheese. I make sure I cut that. I'll talk to you about serving, how to serve it with the whole. And I'm just grabbing my bread and I'm eating it by the mouthful. Crazy. Because there's just nothing else like this texture. It's just sexy. If you have the whole wheel, and you can cut the top off and serve it from the top off. You can take the whole wheel and cut it in half horizontally and just serve half, and then you put half away in the refrigerator, and you can only use part at a time. There's a lot of different ways to like play with it and use it. It's a very great, you know, party cheese, because you can have many people enjoying it at one time. This is, to me, the heart and soul of what Portugal is. There's so many different people who make this style of cheese. Not everybody uses the thistle rennet, and for me, this is key. You need good quality, fresh thistle to give you those very clean flavors, because if you use too much thistle or it's bad thistle, the flavor that you get sometimes is like metal, and otherwise it could like break down and be like you have sand in your cheese, and it's very, very unpleasant. And there's a lot of bad cheese there. I have sacrificed myself for you all so many times, eating such bad cheese to find who's making great cheese. And I hope you're as excited about this as I am, because it's just so alluring and so different. Let's see what the next slide brings. So we get to see some sheep. Look how cute. So some lambs. This is some of the countryside that you have around here. There's tons of citrus around. There's olive groves. There's still a fair bit of pasture, so that are there. The terroir, they're up and high. As I said, they're in the hills. It's a very lush climate for them. So here's the thistle off to the right. The flower grows wild, and then you use the stamens, and you'll take them, and there's a couple different ways. It depends who you are. Sometimes they'll take the stamens, they'll wrap it in a cheesecloth, and they'll just pass it back and forth through the milk. Other times they're going to take the thistle and put it in a bucket and steep it in water, and then use that water and add it to to the rest of the vat, or they'll put it in a bucket with milk and do it that way and then put it in. So there's a lot of different ways. It just really depends on your recipe. And if you can see again, like all of these different Ovelha cheeses that are here, it's only like a 15-day aged cheese. And all of them have the cheesecloth because they get very blubbery and soft. And so you really want to have the cheesecloth on them to start. They doesn't have to finish with it, but it really helps to keep the shape. And we did a video one time because I just squeezing the cheese. And we just go squeeze because it's just so fun to, I know we all grew up saying don't play with your food, but this is like the one cheese that I play with more than anything else, just squeezing it like crazy. So here we have some other, well, actually in the back, they're showing you some requesão, which is what's over here. But this is fun on the right because this is what happens with the cheeses, big or small. It's a lot of manual labor. Each one has to be handled, has to be wrapped. Then they're going to sit on the shelf. If they start to grow mold, they come back here, they wipe down each one, then they have to wrap them again. So this is a very methodical, labor-intensive job. These cheeses need to be spoiled, they need to be handled, they need to be turned, and then they need to, you know, be protected with this this bandage. So it's a lot of manual labor. And in fact, this isn't, if it were the PDO cheese, which is very, very expensive, and people say, hey, do you eat the rind? One of my producers always said, at the price of this cheese, you eat it all. But the Ovelha is actually very well priced within what Portuguese cheeses are. One of the things that increases the price of these cheeses is that we fly them in because they don't have a long shelf life. And especially during the pandemic, like prices doubled for that. But you know, now it's better, but the whole world's gone kelter with shipping right now. Here's just some other views of the cheeses aging and how it's been wrapped. Here's something that shows you the textures from the whole wheel. And yeah, it's just this mysterious, wonderful cheese that you have. A lot of the times the cheese starts out higher and then it'll settle a little bit in what it's there. São Jorge. I have a very soft spot in my heart for this cheese because the DOP, the organization that determines if a cheese can have the name São Jorge or not, decided to invite me to become an honorary member of their organization. And they flew me to the island and I took part in this whole ceremony. We did a procession around the town. They put a cape and a funny hat on me. And I'm the only non-Portuguese person who's been inducted into this. And so I feel very proud and I feel a big responsibility. This is one of the most important cheeses out of Portugal. It was on the island of São Jorge that I showed you. This is an island, very interesting because the way it's done is all the towns are on the bottom next to the sea. And then you drive up and there's another road that goes around the whole island and that's where all the pasture is and that's where all the cows are. Infinite number of cows, way more cows than people. And in fact, if we start going through the PowerPoint, I'd rather people stare at cows than at me because it's so pretty. So we can have a look and see, and I'll talk more about that if we can go back in the PowerPoint. So we go back here to show you the São Jorge, which where you see Velas and the red dot, that's São Jorge. And it's facing, as I said, there's like thousands of cows there. This is one of my favorite views. Here we go. There are cows everywhere. It's also, you can see here, they call them fajas. When you have a town right down by the water, you have all this grassy old top. This guy was so funny because he was just staring at me. I was walking around and he just didn't know what to make of me. And this is the countryside all around it. It's so quaint. It's so beautiful. There are so much milk. So the size of a cheese is usually relative to how much milk is available. And there's so much milk on this island that they need to make large wheels because they have to do it and do it quickly. And there's so much milk on this island that they have 2 shifts the people work. We went into the fields at 8:30 at night to watch. Everybody was milking their cows. They went from milking the cows directly to the cheese plant to start producing. They produced cheese from 9 p.m. until 4 in the morning. Then the second shift came in at 7 in the morning till late in the afternoon. And that's every single day. They can't stop for a moment. Now think of what we all did during the pandemic. Okay. Our lives like kind of stopped for a while, but anybody who makes cheese or who works with animals, they were forced to keep going. The animals didn't know from pandemic or not, the animals still produced, and people had to do something with that milk or it would be lost. So there was a whole lot of cheese being made and not an outlet for it, not nearly enough of an outlet. And this isn't just on São Jorge, this is so many of my producers who made larger wheels of cheese, who had to think about, how can I sell this cheese now? It was just, you know, a huge crisis. I had some people produce videos showing the animals because, you know, they're like, the animals can't go on vacation, the animals can't stop. There are a lot of things in our everyday life we don't stop to think about that, you know, just happen as, you know, as an effect of something else. But so São Jorge, an island who's known for this cheese, São Jorge, they also have a cheese, another cheese called topo for, but it's also cow's milk. The São Jorge is a DOP cheese, so it's a cheese that can only be given the name if they follow certain rules and regulations of an organizing body that oversees its quality control. It's always raw milk. So when you make a raw milk cheese, it's different than a pasteurized cheese because sometimes there's more notes that can change, less homogeneity to it. Sometimes it can be a little bit more assertive. Sometimes it can be a little bit milder. Sometimes you can have more fruity notes. Sometimes you have more earthy notes. Having a raw milk cheese means that there's a little bit less consistency. Having a raw milk cheese meaning you get a lower yield also and make less cheese. So there's a lot of things to making it. I call this kind of like my Portuguese cheddar. It has a little bit of a cheddary texture. Now I'm not tasting what you got. So I don't know if you've gotten a cheese that's kind of round with some good fruit notes and that has still a bite in it. Sometimes that São Jorge has this kick of acidity in the back and at the front in the tongue. So since we do this through a retailer, it can be various different wheels. And today I'm not sharing with you. So it would be fun to have somebody give some of their adjectives for what they're tasting with it. And whether you're drinking a wine where you thought white or red would go better with it. Very salty, interesting. The cheese is semi-firm, right? So it should be around 4 months, 120 days. Curious about the very salty part to it because that's not one of the areas where it usually has it. Is it a little bit, is it piquant? Do you have like a little kick to it? And yep, that's in the raw milk matrix there. I'll bet if you eat that together with that wonderful oak honey, you're gonna have like that silkiness and that voluptuousness of that flavor that'll just make the two pair, you know, really terrific together. We just sometimes don't know what we'll get from raw milk, and that's its allure, and sometimes it's challenge with what might happen. So not every wheel is the same, and some wheels are spectacular, and some are less than spectacular. Here's the cows again. I never tire of showing this or seeing this. It was just amazing. For as far as you can see, there are just cows and cows and cows. And again, this is like in the top part of the island. They have some really cool walks that you can do too. You can walk through the fields and down. There was a great path, and I was told that, you know, if you walk, you can go from all the little towns that are there, but I got lost in the forest. And they said, there are markers, and I'm calling my producer. I'm like, I don't know where to go. And there I came upon a cow and her baby, and they were standing in front of the marker, and I had to wait like 30 minutes until they left because I heard that the cows could be really mean if they're with their young. And only when she moved did I see the way that I could continue because I thought I was going to be stranded. Here you go. This is like the garb from the DOP. And I have to say, I still feel greatly, honored that they wanted to name me as part of this. And I've been seen to go through the airport. I wore this to the island of Terceira last year. But this is very important for them, the tradition. This cheese is part of the tradition. It dates back hundreds and hundreds of years. This cheese is one that they use for anything. They have it super aged that they use it for grating. We went to this lunch and oh my God, I did not want to see São Jorge forever. It was in the appetizer with olives. It was in the first course. Then it was grated over pasta. Then it was served with a dessert. I don't even remember what the dessert was, but they used it any way you could think of it, plain, shredded, grated, just by itself. It was the funniest thing. But, the pride that they take with it is just, absolutely amazing. And there's so many families that are, dependent upon this, all facets of this to work, from the farmer to the people who milk the animals, to the people who work in the cheese plant. They employ a lot of people. Here's just some of so what a difference from the tiny little wheels to the bigger wheels that are on the aging. It's wood here. This is a machine that they're taking them out of the molds. This is a vertical press. If you remember, the other one was a horizontal press. This is a different style. So they're pressing the cheese for a few hours because it's to get that whey out of it and to start the process. From here, it would go to be salted. And these ladies just were amazing, how they got the cheesecloth on there and just the labor involved here. Yo, honey. This is a family company. Beira Baixa, before we were in the Beira Alta, this is the Beira Baixa. So it's further east and a little bit further south in Portugal. The Serra da Estrela is a different, it's more hills than mountains, and kind of like not so lush, but a little bit brown, but it's a very good breeding ground. There's a nature reserve, and this husband-wife team collects a lot of different honey that's there. So many different varieties on what they do, and they have all their own bees. And it's good to look in the PowerPoint so we can see that. So the Beira Baixa, from here, it's still about 2.5 hours for me to get there from when we went to the cheese plant. That's if I don't get lost. So this is Frederico, and I would, and the whole family, and they had me in their house. In fact, some people, it was like no business could be done until I went to the house, sat, had a meal with them, and then we could talk business and go see things. So it was nice to spend some time with them, taste a lot of their things. It's a very simple process where you just see a bunch of vats. You see some filters for when you take the honey from the panels and it goes through, and you want to make sure that you're filtering out the stems and different things that come, and the wax, so that you don't get that when you make the honey. So here is actually where honey is made. There are these boxes. Bees you have to have bees travel by night. You take the boxes, the bees are there, you cover them up, you move them, and then you put them down. And the bees get very agitated if, you couldn't get close to them if they're not. So you cover each one, and then you move them in here. And where the honey gets made is inside each of these boxes. There are all the panels, and you take them in the area that you want to collect the type of honey that it is. So if it's oak honey, you need to be near trees and forests, because they're not collecting it from flowers. They're collecting it from the actual trunks and the different plants that are around there. Whereas the flower is different. There's actually, in lavender, there's lavender honey that comes from the flower and that comes from the plant. And depending which part it comes from, the honey has a little bit different characteristics. But inside there will be about 4 or 5 panels, and then there'll be like the honeycomb that you see that's inside there. And I have to say that suiting up, it's not my favorite thing to do. It's very scary to have those bees, swarm around you. But, the people who are dedicated and they really love it, and you really get the land and the terroir of what's around here. Here you go, some bees. So this is the panel. Here you can see wax and the honey that's coming in here. We work with honeycomb too. And instead of taking this panel and pulling it off and then cutting squares of honeycomb out of it, they actually put little boxes in these panels, and the bee makes the honeycomb inside each of the plastic boxes. It's the craziest thing. There's this big, terrible wasp that's been killing off bees across the world. And I haven't heard of it too much in this part of there, but in the north and over in northern Spain, this wasp has been terrible. They behead the bees. So there's been somewhat of a shortage of honey that's out there. With the honey, of course, besides cheeses, it's wonderful with ice cream. You can use it, of course, you know this, from using other honeys instead of sugar. Tea and coffee. I really feel that as an oak honey, I like this very much with the São Jorge, and I liked it with all the cheeses that are here. I wanted something, just simple and easy to go with, because these cheeses have a lot of personality on their own. São Jorge, as I said, is a really good cooking cheese. So you could use it shredded and shaved. It will also melt. How else could we use it there? I'm trying to think of, could be a good Portuguese style for a frico. So where you're just making it into like a cracker and cooking it down that way. For some of the other cheeses like Alva, it might be fun if sometimes you could like scoop out, cut out the center of the cheese, and you could cook a rice dish and put it inside there and have a really cool way of serving it. Or even pasta. Usually we've seen on some cooking shows, you take a wheel of Parmigiano, which is huge, and you empty it out and then you cook in that. But you can take smaller wheels of cheese and do the same thing. So just empty it out and then use it to decorate. Anyway, that's what I have for you today. Since we fly our cheeses in, I went with some of our more regular ones. We do have more esoteric cheeses that are out there, and in specialty stores, they tend to carry more Portuguese cheeses, but it takes a long time to explain them. And so we bring everything by plane, and we bring some things by pre-order only, so that when it gets here, we know exactly where it's going, and those people have a longer shelf life to sell the cheese, because these are, they don't last a long time, or they're not something that we can store in our warehouse for a really long time, and we want the cheese to be happy. Other than that, I thank you so much for spending some time with us today. It's always my honor and pleasure, and hopefully we'll be doing some things more. I think I'm going to take a break for a few months, because times are changing and people want to be away from the computer and out in nature. So thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Michele. That was really wonderful. So for those that are looking to get more cheese, they should be able to go through
Bruno.
Yes. And I would check through there to see whether or not they've picked up some more, or you can always check with them and ask them. It's always a good idea that instead of just going on there and seeing that they're out of stock, they can sometimes tell you when they plan on getting something in, and some of the things you can do. So,
you can write me. You can write me at Michele with one L at forevercheese.com, and I'll help make it happen. I did talk to them and tell them that, there was a number of people who signed on after they closed the ability to get cheese. So they said that they would build in some. So please, and otherwise you can also write to me and let me know where you're located, and I could maybe help you get another retailer in your area.
Thank you. And for those of you that are first time on this, we also have Taste of Italy, Taste of Croatia, that we've already had a chance to do, and including Taste of Spain. So this makes our fourth in the series. And hopefully by fall, we'll have the charcuterie together and tie that in for our number 5.
Thank you so much, Michael. Appreciate
All
it.
right,
Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, you too. All right, bye-bye.
Bye.